Okay, you've done your investor presentation, you've done it well, or you've submitted your application for a grant, or you've applied for a loan, or you've talked to a friend who may be able to help you with financing. Whatever the case may be, the next step is they want to know more from you. They may have questions. They may want to know that your company is in good standing. They'll have lots of questions. They'll have questions coming from their concerns, if any, about what you presented already. But secondly, for sure, they want to know all about the company and whether or not it's formed properly and that you have no proceedings against you and 9 yards of other stuff. All of this comes in a very interesting due diligence list that's about 3 pages long. We'll talk more about that later. Due diligence, which is kind of a funny term, it just means after you've applied or after you've presented, they want to know more and they're going to dig in deep. So let's get going in the various forms of this. So in the case of friends and family, that is probably a business associate or a friend, and that person is interested, the going is not going to be that tough, usually, unless they're a really professional investor. So some of the initiative for due diligence is probably going to come from you as well as them. They may have a few questions, but you would be good if you would provide them with due diligence information. Certain items from your corporate files to show that you're properly incorporated, that you have a bank account, you have an attorney, you have contracts, you have a financial forecast, and you have financial reports right now on the performance of your business. There are certain things that you just want to make sure that they see so that they're well prepared and understand what your company is all about, how it's doing. So if they're not sophisticated enough to ask you for these things, I suggest you simply volunteer. You don't want to have them be surprised sometime later if something happens that you should have told them about earlier. That'll destroy a friendship real quick. So friends and family, usually business associates, do the right thing for them, answer their questions certainly, but provide them more than probably they're asking for. Banks are pretty cut and dry. You fill out a loan application. You may talk to the loan officer. The loan officer is the person to whom you probably gave the presentation. They are probably more interested in you as a person and whether or not you're going to be able to pay the loan back. It's good that they know that what your business is all about. They are probably not going to ask you a lot of business information. But due diligence for them is the gathering of materials that they move over to their underwriting staff, who are the green eye shades guys who pour through all of this material you sent them. So they're going to ask for a couple of years of tax returns. They may want a personal balance sheet and where you stand. They want to know that you don't have any proceedings against you, that you have a good credit rating, things like that. Most of the information that they're going to want is information that says, by golly, this person has the income and this business is going to have the possibility of paying this loan back readily. You're going to be asked for certain commitments. Personal guarantee comes right to the top of the list, and the putting up of collateral, that covers the loan. So get ready for that. So that's banks. Equity financing is, as I said many times, a whole lot more complicated. Due diligence here is pretty formal. So you've done your presentation. They've taken notes. They've collaborated after the meeting and talked about the issues that they have. They're going to come back to you with a series of questions that they want to discuss. But they're also going to come back at you with a very elaborate request for due diligence material. And this list of material takes the form of a due diligence checklist. Now, as a side note, I'd be glad to send you one of these. I'm not going to go through the 45 items in a due diligence checklist in this video. If you contact me at the email address and or phone number that's flashing across the screen now, I'd be glad to send you a sample one that we use all the time. But back to the video here. Enough commercials. Now, they're going to want to have a meeting. It's going to be several hours long. It may be multiple meetings. They're going to gang up on you. They're going to be 3, 4, 5 of them together to ask you these questions. But they'll tell you ahead of time what they're concerned about, what they don't want to know more about. So you'll have a few days to get ready for this. So the questions range from your financial forecast, but more likely your marketing plan, your sales plan, the basis for your intellectual property and the patents you've applied for or that you already have, and the list goes on of things they want to talk about. And they're going to take notes. At some point they'll end this torture, and you'll hear back from them as to whether or not they're still interested after interviewing you. If they are, what would happen next is they'll present you a term sheet, which is a document that simply says, we'd like to invest in your company. Here's the amount of it. Here's what we want for it, with some percent of your company or number of shares, and a whole lot of other terms. If you'd like a sample of one of these, email or call me on that number I gave you earlier. That's equity financing. It's very formal. It takes a long time. It's going to be a lot of work. So buckle your seatbelt for a long ride. I bring up crowdfunding, not that there's a long due diligence process here, but the closest thing that comes to it is a private individual on a crowdfunding campaign. Their due diligence is to go to your website, see what you're made of, read the material that you present them in a due diligence package that's available to them, which contains some of the very same kind of material, which they will read. If they're thinking of a substantial amount of money, an individual from a investor organization that's part of a syndicate may call you and want to have a meeting. So crowdfunding, too, particularly equity-based crowdfunding, this could lead to a due diligence meeting as well. So you need to be ready for it just about the same way you are for any other equity financing or loan financing due diligence meeting. I also put up grants here. Not that there's a long due diligence process, but the application process is really arduous and has to be done well, as I've said many times. If they're interested in really seriously considering your application, there may be follow-up questions. There may be actually follow-up meetings where you explain further what you mean by certain parts of the application that you've given them. So due diligence for a grant, for one of these government grants or for a foundation grant. So what could follow is a pretty serious due diligence-like discussion with the foundation grant or the government grants that are going to be possible for you. So be ready for that as well. So look, the message here is once you've presented your business to a possible investor, you need to be ready for what's going to happen next. You should have prepared for this already. Your due diligence material is in files on your computer, sitting in a Dropbox somewhere here, or a Google Drive, readily available, organized categories like a filing cabinet on a drive. And that when you're asked for certain materials, you can give it to them instantly. Be ready for that. Look smart. Look like you're organized. You got it. You know this process. Show them you really do by being ready for it. And have a good day while you're at it.